Hello and welcome to Car Uncut, where we're going to talk about the new November 2018 issue of Car Magazine. We've driven the new BMW 3 Series and the 911. We've judged the best sports cars of the year. There's a 324-page supplement all about the new Peugeot 508 and much, much more besides. And I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the editor of Car Magazine, Ben Miller, and also our editor-at-large, Ben Barry. So that's 2 out of the 5 Bens who write for Car Magazine. That's a real honour. So, Ben, talk us through a little bit about what we've done this month. We should maybe start off, we're fresh off the plane or the train, back from the Paris Motor Show. And we've obviously been seeing some of the biggest cars of the year, including, I think the first story you come to in a magazine is actually the Peugeot E-Legend. What does this tell us about the state of Peugeot today?
I think, it was really interesting, Paris show. In the same hall 1, which is where the French manufacturers tend to stake their claim, you had this facing the Renault concept, and they were both electric, but they couldn't have been more different. So Peugeot was sort of saying, don't worry about the electric future, it's going to look really cool, it's going to look like the best cars from the past, but drive completely differently. And here was Renault saying, you won't own a car in the future, it'll go around on its own, and you might call it on your phone, and it's not going to be, it's going to look wild, but it's not going to be particularly exciting.
And the French, or certainly Peugeot, don't often do willfully sort of retro design like this, do they?
No, I think I'm definitely feeling that they paid attention when Honda unveiled their EV and got such a rapturous response to that machine.
Kind of the new look, or the old look, but new tech almost.
I think it's cutesy. A lovely way of, in kind of the same way that Tesla deliberately styled the Model S to be quite conservative looking because what was underneath was game changing. I think there's an element of that going on here, isn't there? Where we'll do a car that visually doesn't challenge you and actually gets you quite excited, but for retro reasons. But underneath will be a power.
The problem with EVs often, isn't it? They leave people cold, and I think it's a really clever way of getting people's emotions, kind of tugging at your heartstrings and thinking, "Wow, that's really cool." And they've done a great job.
Ferrari have also surprised us. And I think you went out to the world debut of the Monza cars, which are again very, very different from Ferrari, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And so this was originally, it was shown at Paris, but unveiled at Capital Markets Day, which was at Maranello, which was it's ostensibly just a shareholder meeting and presentation, but was essentially Ferrari sort of saying, this is where we're going in the past Marchione era. This is our plan. But they unveiled this, which I thought was sort of symptomatic of, I think, of a little bit of a tension between, because their chief designer, Flavio Manzoni, has been very anti-retro, and as always, there is elements of the past in LaFerrari, for example, there's shades of the P460 sports car, but it's very subtle, whereas this is quite a nostalgic piece of work, shall we say. But a cool thing, it's based on the 812 Superfast, so you've got the most powerful Ferrari production engine up front, the V12, and then this sort of bespoke body that you can have in single seat or twin seat form. They're going to build 499, I think.
And you've got sort of the retro style design, which is the E-Legend a little bit, although nice modern twist on it. You've got the Ferrari take here, and let's maybe move on to the robo taxis, which are quite a few of these over at the Paris show hall. And this, the Renault, I've got to check the name of it. The
Easy Ultimo.
Easy Ultimo. Look at that. Yes. We've seen Volvo 360C recently. Quite a few manufacturers looking at a future where, this is really kind of lounge on wheels, isn't it? The art of driving, which, us three here all still love and enjoy, and I'm sure lots of you do too. The future is going to look very different if it looks like that.
Yeah, it is. So they're all sort of taking as read that level 5 autonomy will turn up, electrification will turn up, and then car sharing and the passing into the past of the idea of owning a car. They'll all come together into something like this. So you'll call it when you need it, and it might be just for transport, like the previous concept they did, the Easy Go, or it might be for a luxury, evening out at dining or away for the weekend, in which case you might spend a bit more and get something like this. But Renault were interesting because talking to the design crew, they were sort of saying what they like is the idea that, you might use this to get around, but you would still own a car, but you can own something really exciting. You wouldn't have to own something boring like a Megane. You would hail this to get around, or hail an app hailed electric robo-taxi to get around, but you would have something really exciting and properly sporty that you'd go out and actually enjoy as a car.
And that's where I feel heartened that amidst all the are we going to be driving around in bland boxes or being driven around in bland boxes, I don't know, certainly for the next decade, I think beyond that as well, I think the human desire to kind of actually be an interest in cars. And this brings us on to our cover story. Now, Ben, as Ben Barry, as a 911 owner, we have finally got into the new 992. We've been for an early drive and a ride in it, haven't we? Do you think the evolutionary story about the 911, looks quite similar, but the tech's changing. Does this excite you, 992 era?
It does excite me. It always excites me. I think it's a bit of a myth that the 911 doesn't evolve, isn't it? That it's just the same body shell all the time. This car is undergoing constant evolution. I think last time we've gone to full turbo engines now, including the GT3s. So it's a lot of radical stuff going on here, but I think the thing that really heartened me last time was that the switch to turbo was actually so well managed and so in keeping with the 911 character. So that heartens me for future variants, including the GT3 and the Carrera going forward as well. So yeah, it still excites me very much.
It's a little bit like, I mean, this is a completely banal sort of comparison, but iPhone doesn't really change on the outside very much. A little bit bigger screen over here, different bevel over here. But, essentially it's what goes inside. Is that what we're talking about maybe? I mean, Ben, in this issue on the cover, you've put the new 911 and the new 3 Series. Yeah. These are potentially two very good kind of illustrations of German brands at the peak of their game of just gentle evolution. They've got this polished image and they're just tweaking, crafting it each time. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
it probably is. Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly, I mean, in both cases, we've had a very early sort of prototype drive, and then the 3 Series was shown at Paris. The 911 doesn't turn up undisguised till the end of the year, but it's been running around and photographed quite extensively in spy shots, pretty much undisguised. So, yeah, I mean, it's not revolution. It's still a flat 6. It's still out the back. I think there's another gear on the PDK box, so it's up to 8-speed. And George, who drove the prototype, said that that 7-speed tended to be quite hard to use, especially 6th, 7th, and they've really sorted that out. So it is quite detailed stuff. I think you get the Panamera style infotainment. But God, I mean, it's such a good car. We were talking only a few months ago, weren't we, about how it at least drew with the brand new Vantage in old, 991.2 GTS form. So Christ, I mean, it wasn't broken, to use a cliche. And then the 3 Series, it's a bit bigger. It's quite a lot bigger, certainly quite a lot wider. But James Taylor went out to drive this in prototype form at the Nürburgring and was just absolutely blown away by it.
330i.
So yeah, it's nowhere near the M3, but he
was felt like a mini M3.
Yeah, and he sort of makes the point that it's a mixed blessing for the M division, because on the one hand they've got an amazing blank canvas to work with the G20, but on the other hand, the base car is so good.
Interesting that they've really targeted dynamics as well. It's almost went without saying before, but now they're really saying it's got to be the best in class, which just shows how much they've come under pressure from XE, from Jaguar and Giulia as well. So they've had to really up the game. But
and this is good news. So, people who are worried about, the changing car world with electrification, the autonomy, all these pressures which are going to make cars dull, we're seeing the exact opposite, aren't we? I mean, we're seeing people like Kia, hiring a former head of BMW M division to make Kias better to drive. And I think actually that the state of the everyday car right now is probably as good as it's ever been, almost. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think even the last generation, the 320d, was still a great car to drive. So to think that this car's going to be, allegedly a leap on from that, and from what James has said as well, and I'm sure that's absolutely the case. So yeah, I think people still want to be engaged by their cars. They still want to drive them, and it's still an important selling point for cars like this.
And do be sure to comment below. Let us know if you agree with this, or are you worried about the state of cars in 2018. Now, for people who are worried that cars are getting flaccid and dull and boring, we have done the Sports Car of the Year 2018. Ben, this is a kind of annual event for you.
Yeah.
Why do we hold it every year?
It's a pretty simple remit, isn't it? We gather together the year's best driver or performance cars and pitch them against each other. Usually we have quite a broad field, so I think last year it was 10, maybe 11 cars. This year I really wanted to focus it down on 6 potential winners. So we've got the GT2 RS, the Ferrari Pista, A110 Vantage, McLaren Senna, and the fairly new M2 Competition. And we went to Circuit Charade, so in France, formerly Clermont-Ferrand Grand Prix circuit. I, for some reason, sort of bowed out of it. I think I went to the Ferrari thing, but Ben went instead and had a really nice time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole week down there, driving down there, so a real adventure getting down there. The circuit itself it's a proper French Nürburgring. I spoke to Jackie Stewart about it because he'd won there before, and he said, yeah, if Nürburgring is number 1, this is number 2. He was going back the next weekend, and he was, so he'd been reminiscing about it, and yeah, so I drove it for the first time, and it's a really, really serious but fantastic track. So quite narrow, not a lot of runoff. You can see there's walls there which you could very easily have an off, and that would end very badly there. And just the speed of it, and the elevation, and the mix of camber and fast turns. It was, it was just a great place to be able to.
Very picturesque. I mean, you can see that
picturesque.
we're blessed with amazing
it's just the
sunshine.
full package. Yeah.
We had, it was mid-30s centigrade, wasn't it? It was really, really hot.
Sounds awful. Sounds awful.
We finished on the first night, and suddenly at about 6:30 p.m, absolutely peed it down with rain, didn't it? Suddenly, so we were very lucky with the weather that week. And when we take a group of cars as diverse as that, when you've got a kind of a BMW 2 Series against a McLaren Senna, how on earth do we judge it? How do you compare those cars?
I mean, my job was to whittle those 6 down to 2 and hand those over to James. So we both did it together, but it was me doing the 6 and then James with the 2. And I think what's important is to not think too much about price. And you've got to have that going on at some point, but there's no point really bigging a car up for being cheap. What you want is it's all about how they drive, how they make you feel. And sometimes you can get a car that's much cheaper than something else that you actually prefer driving.
Giant Slayer,
and that's how we approached it. Really, it was purely on dynamics and what the engineers have done with these cars and how their ability on that track.
There's almost a kind of, if you had 1 gallon or 10 gallons of fuel left for one final drive in your life, which one would you take? Sort of thing about it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Sort of, and there's not a bad car there. They're all basically damn good cars, aren't they? The Alpine was just a treat, wasn't it? You and I headed off at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning down to the Eurotunnel in it, didn't we? What a car!
I mean, that's the case in point, isn't it? It's a fraction of the cost. That's £50,000 car. The Ferrari Pista there is 250. It's a fraction of the cost, but you can really experience that track and really feel like you're driving that track to its limit in a car that's fantastically kind of immersive for a relatively small budget. For £50,000 is still a lot, but it's not £250,000.
Very true, very true. Now, also this month, Ben, you have been going in our Inside franchise. We go and take readers to the place they can't go to. Inside ProDrive. Now, that's not that far from where we're based. It's only about an hour from our peaceful offices. Tell us a bit about what you've done and what you learned.
Yeah, well, I mean, ProDrive's always been very close to my heart, and with the Colin McRae link, and as we see there, they're always so associated with Subaru. It is their hit single, but what's really interesting is even beyond motorsport, they've done much more beyond motorsport as well, and it's more comparable to, say, something like Williams Advanced Engineering. So we just looked at all the different divisions of their business and just did a bit more.
They're diversified, so they're not just doing rally. Somebody might think it's just rally cars.
Yeah, it started with ProDrive technology, transferring some of that technology from rally into road cars, like torque vectoring, anti-lag, things like that. And that's kind of ballooned into all sorts of stuff, including they did the rear wing for the McLaren P1. That's right. Ben Ainsley came in, who's America's Cup sailor, saw the principle, which I think it takes a pretty clever bloke to take a principle like that and go, that's going to work on the bottom of my boat when you turn it upside down, and it pops me out of the water. But that's effectively what happened. And ProDrive because they're experts in those kind of hydraulic systems, it was just that principle, and that's how he aerofoiled across the ocean. So
that's why clever people. Dave Richards, I've met a few times over the years. What clever, passionate, great engineers some of these guys are. They have a drive to make these things happen. You've even tested a carbon fibre bicycle, I hear.
That's right, yeah. They're doing a bit like a Dragon's Den kind of venture. They're doing a joint venture with inventors. Someone brought them this Hummingbird bike, so it's a lightweight carbon fibre frame. So ProDrive even make the carbon fibre frame. They have a whole composites division. I think it's something like 7 or 8 kilos, folds up, and you just carry it around. It's something. It's on sale now, about £3,000. But almost the opposite of Colin McRae's Impreza, but still benefiting from that motorsport know-how really through the carbon fibre.
And away from motorsport, Ben, we've got a 24-page supplement inside all about the Peugeot 508. Now this is interesting, isn't it? This is a car which Renault have just gone, you know what? No,
Yeah, yeah.
non plus. We're not going to make any more. We're not going to bother with cars like this. And yet Peugeot are persisting with the 508. We've done a bit of a deep dive in it. Are they right to persist?
Time will tell. It's hard to know at this stage. But I mean, they've done a. I think the point is they've done a really lovely job of it, and they've done it with conviction. So it looks fantastic. Ben, you've driven it, haven't you? And
Yeah.
I think in a similar way to Citroën, they've sort of identified. I might be wrong, but they've identified how they can be uniquely French, but not to the point of compromising the appeal of the car. So
And if you buy one of these, you'll probably be more exclusive than a 3 Series owner, I'd imagine. These.
Yeah.
There's something of a kind of nice alt.
It's impressive.
Luxury
Yeah, I think
vibe,
it is a
isn't it?
brave move to do it. I drove it back from the south of France. We did a big feature, looked at some, all sorts of different engineering marvels. Got to, met the country and that made the car really, and some great roads out there that we explored, and Gorge de Verdun, some really scenic places. Just the whole France, and introducing the car to France, and the response you get out there from people it's different to over here. It's really important for people over there, and people were looking at it like you almost felt like you were driving a supercar or something. They were like, wow.
And it's something in that when we were there for Sports Car of the Year. I mean, pulling into a petrol station, in a tiny little village outside Clermont-Ferrand, with petrol station owners going, "Whoa!" Chitting, making lots of money. But actually, the chat.
yeah, I've seen the receipts. Yeah.
You have. The chat though was just, they really appreciate it. And there's something, if you pull into a petrol station in Wales, sometimes it's a little bit sneery. And yet the Brits, Brits was a very
Was
large.
it the Alpine then that was the star?
I think
They weren't
all the cars,
discriminating.
didn't they? But there's something about that, whether you're in a 508 or, it's wonderful when people just come and express an interest in a car like that. It's brilliant. Very quickly, as we wrap up, we have obviously driven, I think there's 14 new cars driven in this issue, Ben. We've got the Aventador SVJ, a whole feature on that by Chris Chilton, McLaren 600 LT, Mercedes AMG GT 4-door, Suzuki Jimny.
Yeah.
What a diverse bunch of cars go into Car Magazine every month.
Yeah, that's the joy of it, isn't it? The fact that we do have as you say, a deep Aventador SVJ drive on a very slippery Estoril circuit at mind-boggling speeds, and then the Jimny as well. So yeah, it's a great first drive section, chock full of some very interesting cars. And I drove you've driven it as well, but the 600 LT McLaren as well, which on another day could have been in the sports car giant test and acquitted itself really quite well. But that's an amazing achievement as well. So yeah, quite a lot of good metal in there.
All the way back to our roots, really. Mini and small car owner.
Yeah.
I think that juxtaposition of the supercar versus the humble, family transport. That's what we try and bring to life every month. So we hope you've enjoyed that little teaser of what's in the next issue, and do be sure to go out and try it. It's in print on sale now, and we also have digital editions available for tablet and smartphone. So do go and download. Let us know what you think. Do comment below. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.